For the fifth Christmas in a row, my family forgot me. They simply didn't invite me to dinner. So, I packed a bag and drove 3 hours north to my secluded cabin seeking solitude. A week later, they showed up at my door, suitcases in hand, expecting to waltz in as if nothing had happened. But when I opened that door, they were met with a police officer, rolling cameras, and my attorney. The color drained from their faces. I know what you're thinking. How did a 67-year-old grandmother, a widow, end up facing down her own children with the law on her side? Let me tell you, it was a long time coming. It was Christmas Eve, December 24th, 6 p.m. I was in my suburban Chicago kitchen, apron on, the scent of cinnamon from hot apple cider filling the air. I'd bought 24 gourmet pastries from Mrs. Higgins' bakery, and a turkey with stuffing was roasting in the oven. Richard, my eldest, always said it reminded him of his dad. The table was set with white plates, gold rims, the linen napkins my mother had passed down, and the hand-embroidered tablecloth I reserved for special occasions. I waited. 7 p.m. passed. Then 8. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor Stella. Margaret, I saw they posted photos on Facebook. They're all having dinner at Richard's place. My heart constricted. With trembling hands, I opened the app. There they were. Richard, his wife Vanessa, my 2 grandkids, my youngest son Ethan, and his partner, all smiling, glasses raised, laughing, hugging. Without me. Again, it wasn't the first time, it was the 5th. 5 Christmases in a row they'd forgotten to tell me. 5 times I'd ended up alone, surrounded by food no one would eat. I sat at the empty table, turned off the tree lights, and cried in silence, the way I'd learned to cry in the 8 years since my husband passed. But amidst those tears, something shifted. I wiped my face, stood up, and walked to my bedroom with steady steps. From the closet, I pulled out an old brown leather weekender bag, the one my husband used for business trips. It still smelled faintly of his cologne. I started packing clothes, medication, documents, and a green velvet box I kept hidden at the back of the wardrobe. A box no one knew existed. A box full of papers that told the truth about everything. At 11 p.m. I locked the front door of my home, got into my car, and drove 3 hours north to the cabin near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. The cabin I inherited from my husband. The cabin my children always looked down on because it was too far and didn't have high-speed Wi-Fi. The cabin that was worthless to them, but was my sanctuary. I arrived in the early hours of the morning. The cold mountain air hit my face. The stars shone brighter than they ever did in the city. Everything was silent. For the first time in years, I breathed easy. I went inside, lit the fireplace, made chamomile tea, and sat in front of the fire with the green box on my lap. I opened the lid slowly. Inside were the loans Richard never paid back. $40,000 for a business startup that never launched. $25, zeros in Vanessa begged for to cover urgent debts that I later found out were online gambling losses. $60,000 Ethan needed for a down payment on a condo, but used to backpack through Europe with his partner. There were also the deeds to my properties, my original will, and something else. Copies of text messages and emails where they plotted to have me declared incompetent so they could take everything. I wasn't stupid. I never was. I had just been too much of a mother. That night, staring into the fire, I made a decision. No more. I took out my phone and dialed a number I'd saved months ago. Attorney Patterson, I said when he answered. This is Margaret Sullivan. I need you to come see me tomorrow morning. I'm going to press charges against my children. There was a silence on the other end. Are you sure, Mom? He asked. More sure than I've ever been in my life, I replied. I hung up, closed the box, and for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. I knew that when my children finally noticed my absence, when they came looking for me with their excuses and manipulations, I would be waiting. But not alone. And what happened a week later changed everything forever. Attorney Patterson arrived at the cabin bright and early the next day. He was a serious man in his 50s, with a worn leather briefcase and a look that inspired confidence. We sat by the fireplace. I poured him coffee as I opened the green box. Attorney, I began, my voice steady. I need you to see this. I pulled out the documents one by one. Promissory notes, transfer receipts, text messages, emails, all organized by date, all marked with notes I'd written in the margins. He reviewed every paper in silence, occasionally glancing up at me, surprised. Mrs. Sullivan, he said finally, you've documented all of this with impressive precision. I've been keeping proof for years, attorney. I told him. Years waiting for things to change. But I can't go on like this. I told him everything. How after my husband died, my children started seeing me differently. I wasn't Mom anymore. I was a wallet, a family bank that never charged interest. Rich came first. Mom, I have an incredible business opportunity. I just need $40,000. I'll pay you back in 6 months. 6 months turned into 8 years. I never saw a dime. Then it was Vanessa, his wife. She'd arrive with red eyes, dramatizing crises that I later found out were lies. Margaret, we have terrible debt. If we don't pay, they'll foreclose on the house. I gave her $25,000. Their house was never at risk, but her addiction to online casinos certainly was. Ethan, my youngest, the one I thought was different, failed me too. Mom, I found the perfect condo. I just need the down payment. I wired him $60,000. 1 week later, I saw photos on his social media from Paris, London, Rome. He didn't even bother inventing an excuse. But that's not all, attorney, I continued, pulling out another folder. 3 months ago, they tried to forge my signature. I showed him copies of notarized documents where I supposedly authorized the sale of a piece of land my husband left me, a prime lot in Lincoln Park, valued at $1.5 million. The signature looked like mine, but I never signed those papers. This is attempted fraud, the attorney said, standing up. Mom, we can proceed legally immediately. Wait, I stopped him. There's more. I took out my phone, opened a voice memo app, and put it on speaker. It was a conversation between Richard and Vanessa. I had recorded them, without their knowledge, during a family barbecue 2 months ago. I'd gotten up to go to the bathroom and left my phone recording hidden under a cushion. Richard's voice sounded clear. We need to act fast. Mom is getting old. If we can get a doctor to certify she's not all there in the head, we can take control of everything. Vanessa's voice replied. Your brother already talked to a lawyer. He says with 2 witnesses and a medical certificate, we can get a conservatorship. Everything would go into a trust managed by us. Richard laughed. Poor Mom. The recording ended. Attorney Patterson looked at me, his face grim. Mrs. Sullivan, this is criminal. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and attempted theft. We can have them arrested today. No, I said, my voice firm. I don't want them arrested. Not yet. I want them to understand the consequences of their actions. I want them to feel what it's like to lose everything they thought they were entitled to. We spent the next few days preparing. Attorney Patterson drafted documents, and I contacted a local journalist, David, who specialized in elder abuse cases. I wanted the world to know what my children had done. I also called Sheriff Miller, a kind, no-nonsense man I'd known for years. He agreed to be present, along with a deputy to ensure peace. A week later, on January 1st, I was sitting by the fireplace when I heard a car pull up. I looked out the window. It was Richard's SUV, filled with my children and their families. They looked tired, probably from driving around looking for me. They got out, their faces a mixture of relief and annoyance. Richard walked up to the door and knocked. I opened it. He started. Mom, we've been worried sick. Why didn't you answer your phone? I stepped aside, revealing Attorney Patterson, Sheriff Miller, his deputy, and David, the journalist, with his camera rolling discreetly. Richard's jaw dropped. Vanessa gasped. Ethan looked as if he'd seen a ghost. The children, Sam and Mia, looked confused. Come in, I said, my voice calm. We have a lot to discuss. They shuffled inside, their faces pale. The sheriff stood by the door, arms crossed. Attorney Patterson sat at the table, a stack of documents in front of him. David filmed silently from a corner. Mom, what is this? Richard stammered, his bravado gone. This, I said, picking up the green box, is the truth. I opened it and spread the documents on the table. These are the promissory notes for the money you never repaid, Richard. These are the receipts for Vanessa's gambling debts. And these, Ethan, are the bank transfers for your European vacation. Their faces went from pale to ashen. Vanessa started to cry. Ethan looked away. Richard tried to interrupt. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. No, Richard, I cut him off. This is the truth. And this, I pulled out the copies of the forged land deeds, is attempted fraud. And this, I played the voice recording, is a conspiracy to have me declared incompetent so you could steal everything. The recording played, their voices clear, cold, and calculating. When it ended, the silence in the room was deafening. Sam and Mia, my grandchildren, were staring at their parents, their eyes wide with disbelief. Mom, please, Ethan pleaded, tears streaming down his face. Don't do this. It's already done, Ethan, I said. Attorney Patterson has prepared a legal agreement. You have 2 choices, accept the terms, or face criminal charges. Attorney Patterson laid out the documents. The terms are as follows: full repayment of all outstanding loans, with interest, over 5 years. Mandatory therapy for all of you, individually and as a family. And a restraining order preventing you from coming within 100 yards of Mrs. Sullivan for 3 years except for supervised meetings or genuine medical emergencies. Richard looked desperate. 3 years? What about holidays? Christmas? Birthdays? You will celebrate without me, I said, just like you were already doing. The blow landed direct. Richard lowered his gaze. Vanessa clenched her fists, her face red with rage. I don't have a choice, do I? Either I accept or I go to prison. That is the reality, I confirmed. Then I accept, she spat, but I want you to know this is cruel. You are cruel. No, Vanessa, I replied. Cruel was what you did to me for 8 years. This is justice. Attorney Patterson presented the pre-drafted documents. Everything will be in writing. Any breach will automatically reactivate the criminal charges. He placed 3 sets of papers on the table. Richard was the first to approach. He read quickly, his hands shaking. Ethan signed without reading everything, his tears staining the paper. Vanessa grabbed the pen with such force I thought she'd break it, signing every page with withdrawals. Done, she spat. Are you happy now? Have you humiliated us enough? I didn't humiliate you, I said firmly. You humiliated yourselves with your actions. Attorney Patterson collected the signed documents. Sheriff Miller certified as a witness. Sam was still looking at his father with a devastated expression. Dad, did you really do all that? Did you really plan to have her declared incompetent? Richard tried to approach his son, but Sam stepped back. Don't touch me right now. I don't want you to touch me. Son, please, you lied to me, Sam continued. For years you told me Grandma was complicated, that she was difficult, that she exaggerated, and all this time it was you. You were the problem. Mia pulled away from me and walked toward her mother. Mom, is the casino thing true? Is it true we have debts? Vanessa didn't answer, just looked away. Mom, yes, she finally admitted with a hard voice. I have problems, but that doesn't give your grandmother the right to destroy this family. I didn't destroy anything, I said. You guys had already done that job long before today. Attorney Patterson packed all the documents. The first payment must be made on February 1st. It is roughly $900 a month for you, Richard, and varying amounts for the others over 60 months. The transfer details are in the agreement.
And therapy?
Ethan asked, his voice weak. I will send you the psychologist's details. The first session must be within 2 weeks. If you miss 3 consecutive sessions, the deal is void. Richard ran his hands through his hair, desperate. How are we going to pay all this? The business is broke, Vanessa's debts. That is no longer my problem, I said simply. You created this mess, you fix it, but we're your family. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't betray. Family doesn't plan to destroy its own members. Sheriff Miller cleared his throat. Mrs. Sullivan, is there anything else you need? Yes, I said. For them to leave. We're done here. Vanessa was already walking toward the door. Let's go. I can't stand another minute in this place. Richard grabbed his jacket. Ethan wiped his tears, but Sam and Mia stood still. Grandma, Sam said with a trembling voice. Are we forbidden from coming too? My heart constricted. Those kids weren't to blame for anything. You can visit me whenever you want, my loves. You are innocent in all of this. Really? Mia asked with hope. Really? In fact, I looked at the attorney. I want it made clear in the agreement that the grandkids can visit me freely, with or without their parents. It will be noted, confirmed Attorney Patterson. Sam ran to me and hugged me tight. I'm sorry, Grandma. Sorry for not realizing sooner what was happening. You don't have to apologize for anything. You're a good boy. Richard watched the scene from the door with an indecipherable expression. Sam, Mia, let's go, he ordered. In a minute, Dad, Sam replied, not letting go of me. And in that moment, Richard understood he had lost something more than money or property. He had lost the respect of his own children. Vanessa was already in the SUV, honking impatiently. But Richard remained standing in the doorway, motionless, looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Mom, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I never wanted us to get to this. But we did, I said. Because of your decisions, because of your lies. He was desperate. The business, I lost so much money. The suppliers scammed me. Imports got delayed. Clients canceled. Everything fell apart in months. And your solution was to rob me. It wasn't going to be robbery. I thought with the money from the land, I could save everything. Pay you back what I owed. Start over. Lie, interrupted Attorney Patterson. The emails we have show you plan to split the money 3 ways. Nothing was earmarked to pay Mrs. Sullivan back. Richard closed his eyes, trapped in his own lie. Ethan was still sitting on the sofa, head in his hands. David was by the window, arms crossed, processing everything he had heard. Ethan, I said, looking at my youngest son. Look at me. He lifted his gaze. You are a good man, Ethan. You always were. But you let your brother's ambition blind you. You let him drag you into this. You deserve more than that. You deserve a life built on honesty, not on lies and greed. Ethan broke down, sobbing. I know, Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm so a chance now to fix it, I said. To build a new life, a real life. David, the journalist, stepped forward. Mrs. Sullivan, thank you for sharing your story. This will help so many others. It's not over yet, I said. This is just the beginning. The next few months were difficult. Richard struggled to find work. Ethan took on 2 jobs to make his payments. And Vanessa started therapy for her gambling addiction. The restraining order meant I didn't see them, but I regularly saw Sam and Mia. They would come to the cabin and we would bake cookies, tell stories, and walk in the woods. They were my solace. Slowly, things began to change. Richard started attending his therapy sessions, and I received a letter from his therapist, saying he was making progress, confronting his deep-seated issues of entitlement and financial irresponsibility. Ethan called me regularly, not asking for money, but just to talk. He told me he'd found a small apartment with David, and they were happy. Vanessa, through her therapist, sent me an apology letter, expressing remorse and a desire to heal. 1 year later, it was Christmas Eve again. I was at the cabin, The snow fell softly outside, and I had put a small tree near the fireplace. Ethan and David arrived 2 days before, bringing gifts, food, and laughter. Richard, surprisingly, arrived too. He prepared dinner: roast turkey, mashed potatoes, salad, apple cider. He made it all with his own hands. On the night of December 24th, we all sat around the table: Richard, Ethan, David, Sam, Mia, and me. "I'd like to say something," Richard began, standing up. Everyone looked at him. A year ago, I was a different person. A horrible, arrogant, manipulative person willing to destroy my own mother for money. His voice cracked. Ethan put a hand on his shoulder. "This year taught me that hitting rock bottom is painful, but necessary. I lost everything material. But I found something I had forgotten. My humanity." He looked at his children. "Sam, Mia, I'm sorry for not being the father you deserved. For prioritizing appearances over real love." The two were crying. "Ethan, I'm sorry for dragging you into my plan, for contaminating you with my sick ambition." Ethan nodded, wiping his tears. "And Mom," Richard looked directly at me. "Sorry for forgetting who you were. For seeing you as a resource and not as the extraordinary woman who gave me life, raised me, loved me even when I didn't deserve it." He knelt in front of me. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if someday you can give it to me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor it." I took his face in my hands. I looked him in the eyes. "Richard, I forgive you." He cried like a child in my arms. After dinner, while the others washed dishes and sang carols, I went out to the porch. The sky was clear. The stars shone like diamonds over the snowy pines. Ethan came out behind me with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Mom, what are you thinking about?" "About your dad," I said. "About how much I still miss him." "He would be proud of you," Ethan said, "of how you handled all this." "You think?"
I know.
"Dad always said you were the strongest woman he knew. Now I understand why." We drank our chocolate in comfortable silence. "Ethan."
Are you happy?
"Yes, Mom. For the first time in my life, I am genuinely happy. I have debts. I work 2 jobs. I live in a small apartment. But I have David. I have peace. I have dignity." "Then you are rich." I smiled. "I guess so." The following days were magical. We walked through the woods, played board games, told stories, laughed. On January 1st, while everyone slept, I opened my journal. I had started writing a year ago, documenting everything: the betrayal, the pain, the struggle, the redemption. I wrote the last entry. "Today, I am 68 years old. I am no longer the woman who waited for crumbs of love from her children. I am no longer the mother who let herself be used for fear of loneliness. I lost a family, but I gained something more valuable. I recovered myself. Richard is learning to be a real man. Ethan found his way. Vanessa is healing. Sam and Mia are growing in an environment of genuine love. And me, I finally understood that dignified solitude beats humiliating company. The cabin everyone despised became our refuge. The place where a broken family learned to rebuild itself. Not with money, but with truth, with consequences, with tough love, but real love. My foundation for elderly women will open in March. We will help others like me find their voice, their strength, their dignity. Because no one should wait until they are 67 to learn that they are worth who they are, not what they can give. I closed the journal. I looked out the window. The sun was coming out behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. A new year, a new life. Sam came out of his room sleepy. "Grandma, you up already?" "Couldn't sleep." "Was thinking about what?" "That sometimes losing everything is the only way to gain what really matters." He hugged me tight. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too." "Sweetheart." Richard made coffee. Ethan made pancakes. David put on music. Mia was dancing in the kitchen. And I, sitting at my table, watched them. My family, broken, imperfect, rebuilding, but real. Finally real. Because true wealth isn't in what you own, but in what you don't allow them to take away. Your dignity, your peace, your self-love. And that no one will ever take from me again.